you're gonna blow up on Substack this year. Or you're gonna get on Substack and make friends and find your readers and maybe self-publish a book and meet a lot of really cool writers. You know, whatever your goals are, your aspirations, I'm not gonna judge. But if you wanna blow up on Substack, that's cool too. So a few months ago, I made this video explaining how to get on Substack for creatives. And in that video, I talked a lot about like how to start writing consistently, motivation, like the mindset that you have to have going into Substack, or at least the mindset that helped me become consistent on Substack and start growing my audience. But in that video, I did not really get into like the nitty gritty of setting up your backend, what you should write for your tagline, your about page, even visuals, branding, like all that scary stuff. I didn't really touch on any of that. So I wanted to make another video that was talking about actually setting up your Substack without overthinking it. Because when I talk to writers and creators online, I think that one thing that's really holding us all back is that, and I know this like held me back too, we overthink everything. Like since we're artists, since we're creatives, we want to stand out, we want to be the best, but that can sometimes like put us in the space where we're not putting out our work because we're afraid that what we're putting out is not perfect. So in this video, I'm going to go over all the back-end stuff, all the setup stuff that I did when I was making my newsletter, Internet Bedroom, which we just hit 3,000 readers. And I am just like so grateful for that. And I can't believe I get to show up here and be like, yeah, I'm a paid writer. And writing is my full-time job. Like, this is wild to me. Obviously, not all my income comes from Substack, but to be making money for my own creative expression on Substack is really cool. And it's also been really cool to meet other writers and other creatives and follow them on their journey. And honestly, thank you guys. I am so grateful. So if you're looking for a video about like how to write on Substack and like how to get your mind right to start thinking about doing a Substack, go watch my first video that I made on this topic. And if you're looking about how to actually set up your Substack, stay right here because that's what we're going to do. I also want to thank the sponsor of today's video. I know, I can't believe we have less than 1,000 subscribers and a sponsor, but it's me. I'm sponsoring this video, and I'm letting you guys know that I actually opened up Substack audits. So I had a lot of people like in my DMs or emailing me just like, oh, can I talk to you about my Substack? I want to chat with you. Could you take a look at what I'm doing? And I was like, yes. So I made the Substack audit. There is a link in my bio in my Stan store, and it's only $50. You get a full audit, what I think you're doing well, what I think you could improve upon, and like easy ways forward for anything that you're struggling with on Substack. So it's really like a full picture view of your Substack and how you can build it. And you also get a 10-minute video from me kind of talking through some of the finer points. So go grab that audit. I only drop about 4 or 5 a week. So go grab that right now. I will leave a link down below for you. So thank you, me, for sponsoring this video. This is the first video not sponsored by Prozac. No, I'm just kidding. And the second thing I want to say is that this video is mostly for like artists and creators online who are interested in getting on Substack. I think that other kinds of people can be on Substack too. Like, I'm actually a ghostwriter for small business owners and entrepreneurs on Substack, and I help them grow their newsletter. A lot of the strategies that I'm like going to talk through today can apply to those kinds of Substacks as well. But I think there are like specific things for those types of Substacks that I would do a little bit differently. So, you know, if you guys want me to make that video, I can, but I get the sense that most of my viewers are kind of like artists, creatives, creators online. But if you're out there and you're like, oh, I would like to know how to use Substack for my small business, or I'm an entrepreneur, could Substack help me? It can definitely make that video in the future. So just let me know. The first thing I want to talk about is picking your name, because I think this is the thing that most people get really hung up on, especially if you're like an overthinker, if you're a perfectionist girl, if you are, you know, even a lazy perfectionist or a procrastinator. The name seems to trip people up all the time. So I'm here to kind of like release you from that. We are going to get past the naming thing. What I'm going to tell you is that you really don't need the perfect name. All you need is a name that kind of sets the vibe for your newsletter. So you can think about your Substack kind of like a room that you're inviting people into. Maybe it's your internet bedroom or, you know, a really cool room at a party that you set up. But you want their first like impression of you to be the vibe or the atmosphere of that room. So you don't need to say like, in this room, we will be learning about this. Like, that's a classroom. We want to leave the classroom. So just like at a party, if you're trying to set the mood or the vibe, you're putting on music, you're making the lights a certain way. And so I want you to think about your name on Substack as kind of like those things that set the tone or set the atmosphere. So instead of saying what your Substack is and what it does, the name's really your opportunity to set the vibe and set the mood for people. So the actual words, and like, I can't believe I'm saying this on video as a writer, the actual words that you use for your Substack name, those don't matter as much. So for example, if you are writing a newsletter about like social media strategy or content creation for artists, and you call it the social strategy drop, there's nothing wrong with that name, but it's like so specific, right? It sounds generic and it sounds like any other, you know, newsletter out there that's about social media strategy. You really want to pick a name that's going to give people like not only an idea of what you write about, but again, set the tone for your newsletter. And I've said this in some of my shorter videos, but I really think about my newsletter, Internet Bedroom, as like a destination for people, as opposed to just somewhere that they are landing randomly. If the algorithm brings you to me, you're supposed to be there. You're supposed to be like in my world, in my space. So all of the advice that I have to give in this video is really centered around that idea of creating a destination, creating an atmosphere, creating a vibe for your readers. The words that you choose for your title, I want you to think about making your reader feel something with those words, as opposed to transmitting like pure information for them. And honestly, your name, whatever name you choose, it's going to gain meaning over time. Even if it's like the stupidest name when you start out. Your readers are going to give it meaning. You'll give it meaning as you start shaping your newsletter. So again, I'm kind of trying to like break you out of that mindset of being perfect, because like, yeah, perfect is the enemy of good, but also perfect doesn't give you a lot of space to grow and evolve. When I started Internet Bedroom, I really had no idea like what those words meant. They were just kind of on my mind. I was writing a book about girls' bedroom culture, and I knew I wanted to put my writing on the internet. So I was like, oh yeah, Internet Bedroom. That name has come to have like meaning for people as I've created the newsletter. And it's come to have different meanings for me too. And people will DM me all the time about like what Internet Bedroom feels like to them or what it means to them, or they'll send me like memes or things and be like, oh, this is so Internet Bedroom coded. So like that meaning wasn't really there when I started out. And even now, I can't exactly describe. I'm like, yeah, Internet Bedroom is that cozy space on the internet that's full of a bunch of random cool girly trash and art, and like it's a place where artists can come and feel seen. Like that's what it means to me, but it might mean something completely different to other readers of mine, and that's okay too. Because again, like the name is not what's important, it's the feelings and the emotions that the name invokes. Here are some examples of names that I really like. At the very top of my list was Midwest Aesthetic. And I think this is so like funny. Every time I see this name, it just makes me laugh because the Midwest, being a Midwesterner myself, it is not like a hotspot of culture out here. So to have this kind of like bratty name of like Midwest aesthetic is so fun. My internet friend Anna writes that newsletter, and it's about fashion and culture and like all from this kind of like wry, dry sense of humor that's very Midwestern to me. So Midwest aesthetic is so perfect for that. I also really like my friend Alex's newsletter, Feels Like Home. That one just so perfectly translates like his view of the world and how he really like holds his readers close and is giving them like just little pieces of his heart every time that he's writing for them, and how he wants his readers to come in and feel like they can make a space for themselves when they read his newsletter. I think it's Emily Sunderberg's newsletter called Feed Me. And in that newsletter, she is kind of analyzing cultural trends and internet culture. And it's all behind a paywall, but the content is incredible. Feed Me just kind of evokes this feeling for me of like the constant kind of demand for output and content that is part of being a creator online. It's like, yeah, it's a never ending. The internet is always being like, feed me, feed me. I love that name. I think it's so simple, so perfect. And then last but not least, my friend Jessica, she writes a newsletter called Jessica Unnamed. And she writes a lot about like identity and living as a Black woman and culture. And I just like that she used her own name and then put unnamed after it. It kind of immediately tells you like, okay, this newsletter is about identity. It's about this person exploring their identity. And I think her like little visual is even a mirror, which is really smart as well. And I'll talk about visuals in a second. But yeah, hopefully you can see how with those names, none of them are like all that complicated at all. And they don't necessarily like tell you exactly what the newsletter is about, but they evoke a feeling and a vibe for you. All right, so let's talk about backend setup. And by backend, I mean your about page, your welcome emails, your tagline, all that good stuff. This is the stuff that I think is actually really important, but nobody on Substack really treats as all that important. Everyone's very worried about like their branding and their name and stuff, but I think it's kind of like, you know, again, sending out the party invitations, inviting everyone over, picking the right music, picking the right lighting, and then the room you invite them into is like completely empty. That's what it feels like to me when someone has like the generic Substack about page, or they have like just a generic welcome email. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, you overthought your name, but you didn't go the distance. Please don't just like leave the preset forms up. Just take like half an hour and write an about page, write a welcome email. I think that these things are super, super important, again, for just making your readers feel like they understand where they're at and they belong there. They're meant to be there. So, okay, let's start small. Let's start with the tagline. And I think that there are two general ways to approach writing a tagline. And the first is to just directly tell people what your newsletter is about. And the second, and the one that I secretly like more, is telling the reader who your newsletter is for. So I took the first route. I think my tagline is a newsletter about girl culture and nostalgia. And honestly, like, it's okay. Like, I'd give myself a B for that because the newsletter evolved into something much more. So I feel like that's kind of like the danger in creating a tagline that says specifically what the newsletter is about. But if you create a tagline that tells your reader who they are, then you have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of content. So a couple taglines that I really like. Lee Stein's Attention Economy. Her tagline is honest advice about making a career as an author today. And that makes sense because attention economy is really her thinking about how authors show up online, giving writers a lot of resources for building their presence online, building their content online, and getting over that like fear of being visible that we all have as writers. writers. So that one fits in the first category, but I think it works. Like it does tell like who her audience is at the very end. She's talking to like modern writers who are maybe early career or mid-career. Viv Chen's Molehill. This is her tagline: armchair fashion sociologist in 90s Prada. And you might be like, well, okay, that kind of fits into the second category, but it says who she is, not who her audience is. But I think that this tagline works because it tells the reader what the Substack is about. So fashion and sociology, she's using fashion as a lens for reading culture. That's very clear. And then it gives them a really clear picture of her take on fashion, like that nod to 90s Prada. We know that she's going to be like up on her fashion history. She's probably interested in archival fashion. She knows a lot about how nostalgia and fashion history inform fashion trends today. So we're not just getting like a pop take on fashion. It's going to go a little deeper than that. So in this case, actually describing herself was very effective. And last but not least, one of the writers who I did an audit for, her name's Christina Nasti, and her Substack Cheeky, her tagline is a blog for the girls who used to steal their mom's Cosmo mags before they had Boo. I just like love that visual. It tells us exactly what type of reader Christina's looking for, and it really clearly evokes the type of content that's actually in her newsletter, which like Cheeky, it gives me the vibe of going out with drinks for your girlfriends and talking shit. And like, I think she does that really well. It's a really fun newsletter. She's like the real Bridget Jones, Carrie Bradshaw of Substack. So I think all those taglines work for different reasons. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments and why. But moving on to the About page. And the About page, it seems like it should be about you. But what I'm going to say is your About page is actually more so about your reader. So the About page is a moment where you can call out exactly who your newsletter is for and exactly that ideal audience you envision when you sit down to write. And I think this is really important because writing never happens in a vacuum, and the best writing is often for other people. As much as like we like to say that writing is about self-expression, like yes, it is. It's definitely self-expression. But if you're not thinking of your reader, it's a little bit selfish expression, I think. So your About page should actually be about who you want to be reading your newsletter. A recent Substack that I just subscribed to called It's Critical, she writes a lot about like fashion. She wrote this piece on Vogue's new editor and why like this whole internet uproar about that person not being like fashionable. I checked out her About page and she kind of took like the basic template that Substack gives you and she reworked it in this really great way. So she tells you what her newsletter is about, who her readers are, and also the benefits of subscribing, and makes you feel like you're in a community or in a club like right off the bat. This is a really great example of writing that About page. It's less about you as a writer and more about the readers who are coming to your newsletter. I also super love Ryan Elizabeth Pete's video About page. Ryan is another newer writer on Substack whose work I've just like fallen in love with. I like her Substack too because she does not shy away from video content. And I think like last year when Substack rolled out video content, a lot of the writers on Substack I noticed were pretty anti-video. And I'm like, I don't know. I like video. Like once I got used to it, I was like, it's fun. Like you can still be a good writer and make videos. It's not like we have to hide behind our screens all the time. So I loved Ryan Elizabeth Pete's video About page because she really walks you through her newsletter, and her newsletter has all these different sections where she shows you like her thrifting finds. She's got meditations on being in her late 20s and being, you know, a little bit nervous about turning 30. This video About page, I watched the whole thing because I just felt like I was hanging out with her. And that's the kind of thing that makes someone move from just like a casual viewer of your newsletter to someone who's like an actual reader of your newsletter and is going to come back week to week. The About page is that really fine balance between you telling the reader what's in the newsletter and you kind of calling in the reader and saying, hey, this is for you. If you like these things, this is for you. And honestly, like I need to update my about page because I feel like Internet Bedroom has kind of evolved since I started it. Do not sleep on welcome emails. I have like way too many generic welcome emails in my inbox. And you're like, Rachel, it doesn't really matter that much. And I'm like, no, it matters. In this essay, I will. Because when someone subscribes to your newsletter, they want to feel like they're stepping into your world and like they're a part of the club, a part of the community. And I find that the welcome email is a really great place to kind of orient them to your newsletter. I really like it when writers include their favorite pieces or curated picks from their newsletter, because if I'm trying to like wade through their newsletter and figure it out for myself, I'm probably going to like scroll on to something else. But if the writer's welcome email is well written and is like, hey, I think you'd like these other essays as well, I'm going to click on it. I just am. I'm going to keep reading. When you're writing your welcome email, what I want you to think about is how you would feel if someone came up to you and was like, man, I read this essay that you wrote and it meant so much to me. Or, wow, I really love your book. Like, I'm such a huge fan of what you've written, what you put out into the world. Imagine that feeling for yourself and then take that feeling and try to put it into the writing in your welcome email. I'm really, really big on like gratitude, and the welcome email is like that moment where you can express gratitude directly to your readers, because eventually like your newsletter is going to get big enough to where you don't know every single subscriber on like a first name basis, right? Not everyone puts their names on Substack, but the welcome email, it can show that like deep gratitude for the reader choosing to spend their time with you. Like, we are in an attention economy. Attention is currency. And I am so grateful when you guys choose to watch one of my videos or read one of my essays. I read every single comment. I try to respond to as many as I can. I want my welcome email for my newsletter to be that moment where I say thank you. Right? Like, I am truly grateful that you spend your time, your money, your attention with me, because you could do it elsewhere, especially in this world. So yeah, those are some things about welcome emails, your backend, your about page. Again, Substack has all like generic forms for these that come with your Substack when you first get started. And some people don't even know that these are things you can set up. But I think it's really important. Just take like 30 minutes, write a welcome email, write your about page, come up with a like fun tagline. And it'll just make your Substack and your newsletter feel more cohesive and more like a world that the reader's stepping into and spending time in, that destination idea again, as opposed to a place that they can just scroll past. All right, visuals. So this is secretly my favorite part, because as passionate as I am about good writing, I also have become such a Canva girl this year. It had something to do with getting rid of all my zine making supplies when I moved, and then discovering I make collages on Canva. It's a whole new world for me. The nice thing about Substack, I really do believe you do not have to have like Instagram perfect visuals. So again, this is not me saying like overthink everything. This is just like some ideas to get you guys started in thinking about like that visual branding. Because when I started out, like the visuals were actually the most annoying part of Substack for me. I was like, man, like I have to show up and be good at writing, and I have to have like good visuals. But just like with everything else in my Substack, and I talked about this in the first video, my visuals evolved over time while my newsletter evolved. Internet Bedroom did not look like it does now when I was first starting out, and you do not have to have the perfect set of visuals when you start out. So if that's holding you back from hitting publish, just like throw anything up there. You can change it later, you can rebrand. It's not that big a deal. When it comes to visuals, the goal is just to get people recognizing that you are you when you land in their inbox. So whereas like your about page and your welcome email and even your tagline are really about who's reading your newsletter, a couple of key visuals can help, carve out your identity for the reader. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is logo design. Logos, I believe they're 256 by 256 pixel. They show up really, really small. What I find does not work for logos are logos that are like super visually dense. So if your newsletter has like a really long name, you might not be able to fit that entire name into your logo without it looking a little odd or totally illegible to people. Same goes like with an image. If you're using an image for your logo, if that image is super visually dense, it's not going to register that well because the logos are just so small. And like maybe Substack will change that in the future. I don't know. But right now, logos show up everywhere super, super small. So just kind of have that in the back of your mind. I find that the two things that work really well for logos are either typography or a very strong single image. You almost want to think of your logo like an emoji because that's what I mean in terms of like simplified visual imagery. Good examples of typography. Once again, Anna with Midwest Aesthetic, she just has like a M that's like in a really nice font that kind of evokes the feeling of her newsletter. And I think that works really well. Like I know, okay, that's Midwest Aesthetic. That's Anna, I know who it is. Emma Gannon's the hyphen. It's just HY and then an actual hyphen. Like both of those logos are good examples of names that would not register very well if they put the whole name on the logo. They simplified really nicely and it works. As for images, there's link in bio, which is just like that little link emoji. I think that's really cute. Chris Makes Stuff, which is like a sad computer. And then I really love Jessica DeFino's new logo for her like rebranded Substack called Flesh World, which is this kind of like alien Instagram face. All of these visuals work because they're legible and they help you kind of like catch the vibe of the newsletter, and they're not so visually dense that you can't understand what they are. So I learned this lesson with my logo because when I started on Substack, the Internet Bedroom logo, I think it was like a still from Perfect Blue of the main character laying in her bedroom. And then I had one of my friends, Reagan, do the lettering for me, and I had her write out Internet Bedroom, and I overlaid that on that image. And it was just like way too busy. I don't think people could really see the actual like name of the newsletter, and they certainly didn't understand that was like a Perfect Blue reference. So it was just too dense. And now I just have the little green TV and then Internet Bedroom is on the screen. I think that works pretty well, even though I do have the whole name on there, because like when you see the little green TV, I think you know it's me. Like I've kind of made the neon green thing my thing on Substack. But you guys can let me know. I'll change it for you guys if you don't like it. But I think it worked. So second kind of visual I want to talk about is your profile picture. And again, these show up super, super small, but they show up in your byline and then also when you post a note on Substack. So it's not your logo for your newsletter that shows up when you do, like notes is kind of like Substack's Twitter feature. It shows your like profile picture essentially. The image needs to be really clear once again and not very visually dense. So I find like a headshot works best. I really like my friend Alex. I talked about his Substack earlier. His Substack feels like home. He's just got a really nice clean shot of himself. The background's not very busy and he's smiling. I think that's like one of the things that like, if you know Alex, like that's like what it feels like to like sit with him and just chat with him. Like he's really warm, he's really welcoming. So that profile picture I think really works well for his Substack. My profile picture is not me. It is an icon from Doll's Palace, which is this Web 2.0 website where you could make dolls and dress them up as like goths or preps or like hot girl. So mine is like a blonde girl wearing a corn sweatshirt. But like, I feel like that is me. And I like it because it's kind of like, it gives a little bit of the personality of the newsletter. And there are a couple people on Substack who have profile pictures that are not themselves, whether for privacy reasons or just because they like that. And so you can kind of go either way. Like a fun emoji that's not you, but kind of symbolizes you, or like a really clean headshot. And you do not need like a whole photo shoot. That is not necessary. Do not hire a photographer. Just like take a picture of yourself against a pretty basic background, or, you know, go on Doll's Palace and create a doll wearing a corn sweatshirt. But the last thing I'm going to talk about is the header on the email. I do not know the dimensions, so I will pop them up on screen right here. But I think that this is a visual that's really important as well, because when someone clicks open an email from you, your header is the thing that they see first. So again, going back to that like idea of setting a tone and setting a vibe. For mine, when I was starting Internet Bedroom, I got really into making like these beaded necklaces. I'm still very into beads, but I made one that said Internet Bedroom on it, and I was like, this just kind of fit the aesthetic of the newsletter. I would actually change this now. I would probably have like my icon, like the little green TV, and just like the pink background that I use for all like my social posts. But yeah, set up your email header, just make it recognizable, make it like you, and do not use a Canva template. As a Canva artist, stop using Canva templates, okay? Like you can actually import your own stuff. You can import your own fonts, and that stuff is so fun. I would make a whole video on that because again, Canva is my passion. And I think that whenever you use, it is fun to look through all the Canva templates, but it's more fun to create your own, and it just gives that personal touch to your newsletter that's not generic. All right, so as I was scripting this, I was like, oh no, I'm doing that thing where I think it's gonna be a 15-minute video and it's probably gonna be 20 or 30 minutes. So there was a lot that I wanted to talk about that I didn't cover. I wanted to talk about promo, like how to promote yourself, how to use notes, how to use recommendations, all that good stuff. So I will make a third video in the series that's more about promoting your Substack, building a community, and just strategies for getting to know other writers and other people on the platform in a way that does not feel like attention grabby. Learning to promote my own writing has probably been the number one thing that has helped me grow my Substack. And I think that we should be less afraid of self-promotion than we are. I talked a little bit about this in my first video, but self-promotion does not have to feel bad, really. It's kind of silly if you think about it. So next video, next time. If you liked this video, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And every time you give me a thumbs up, Wallace gets a little butt pat. So just know that. I've also been thinking about putting together a little course or a book about how to get started on Substack, just like an ebook, because all these topics, I could go way more in depth, but I can't fit all that into one video. So let me know which one you would like, if you would like a course or if you'd like an ebook. I've been kind of playing around with both ideas, but I want to pick one. And then finally, thanks again to our sponsor, me and my business. So if you guys want a Substack audit, go ahead and grab yours. I'll leave a link down below. And then I can give you very tailored, specific advice to you about your Substack. And I love getting to know you guys on Substack. I love reading your stuff and seeing what you're doing, and just the number of messages that I got on that first video about Substack was so overwhelming, just people feeling inspired and they wanted to get started. And that makes me really happy, because whether you're a writer or an artist or creator, I really do think that your work is important, and you should be putting your work out there for other people so that you can find your readers, you can find your people, and you can build the community that you want. I think that's one of the coolest things you can do for yourself. And even if you don't have thousands of readers, or you're making 6 figures off your Substack, all that stuff doesn't really matter as long as you're expressing yourself and making your art on your terms. I think that's my number one piece of advice, is to not lose sight of that. So yeah, that's all I have to say for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.